Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Aucademy Live. And today we are looking at ways we explore our autistic experience. And I've got a lot of Aucademy regulars here with me today to talk about how different people kind of go on an autistic discovery journey. And I'm going to introduce myself and give a physical description. So I'm Annette Foster, and I am a white person with long blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of an ovally face, and I'm in Chloe's house. So I've got a screen behind me and lots of stuff that normally I would not have with me, but I'm actually in Chloe's house today. So I am joined by Victoria. Would you mind giving a physical description of yourself?
Yeah, I'm Victoria, white, older person with long grey hair, wearing glasses, with a blue, slightly striped top, sat in my living room with a white wall and a couple of pictures.
Fabulous. Thanks, Victoria. I've just gone totally randomly. We've gone in the middle first. So we'll go with David next. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm David Gray Hammond. I'm a white male in his 30s with a beard, a lip piercing, an ear tunnel, thick rimmed glasses, and a shaved head, sat in a room with blue brick walls, that was a mouthful, and curtains that he has only just realised are half hanging off the wall.
Thank you. Great. So, Sai, do you mind introducing yourself, and then you're going to be voicing for Libby and Ben today as well, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm a 17-year-old bodybuilder from Connecticut. I've got blue trunks on my head with striped trousers. And Ben is a disgustingly young white male with dark blonde hair and a navy blue t-shirt with a bookcase on the left and a window on the right. And in front of him, he's actually got just a menagerie of pictures of me.
Thank you so much, Sai. And we'll wait for Libby's physical description in a second. There we go. Could you give Libby's?
And Libby is currently Count Dracula Potato, has low spoons, look a bit like Ben.
Yes.
A lot prettier than Ben, really.
They're not currently, Ben says. Okay, and Jaesic, do you want to give us a physical description?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jaesic with they, he pronouns. I am sitting in my car currently with my car soup. And I'm wearing a black and red flannel. I'm a white individual in my late 20s, and I have blonde hair on top and shaved sides.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. I love the description of the car soup in particular.
I had to. So if you see me like dipping off, that's what I'm doing. I'm eating car soup.
Car soup. Yes. My pronouns are they, them, and Chloe gave me a new badge that actually has they, them on it, and it's in the shape of a Ouija board little thing. It's very cool, and I'm very happy with it. That was my birthday present. Okay, thank you for the physical descriptions. So because everybody here is an Aucademy regular, and we don't really need to introduce ourselves and to say who we are and how we discovered to be artistic, we decided just to dive straight in and talk about how we all individually explore our autistic kind of selves, or go through our own autistic discovery journey. And I was just going to kick that one off with a few slides about my own creative practice as an artist and how that's kind of developed and morphed and gone into all sorts of other things. But yeah, so if the powers that be, the magical PowerPoint person could put my PowerPoint up, that would be great. Yeah, and we're actually, in a bit, I'm going to talk a bit about SYA and our autistic discovery journey that me and Chloe created when we kind of both discovered each other as autistics in 2018, which was quite a long time ago. But before that, Chloe actually took part in my PhD research in a performance called Adventures of Super Autie Gang. And I am there in my Super Autie, at the time, girl. That's quite funny. Costume and an applique of that on the front, and on the back is an applique that says Autistics are awesome. And if you could move on to the next slide, Ben. Yeah, so here is another part of the performance, which I kind of, and really as an artist, I started exploring my autistic nature. I was all on my own. I found out that I was autistic when I was 39 years old. It was 2011, I think. Not very many other autistic people. I didn't know any other autistic people. I didn't really know anything about it. So I just started reading everything I possibly could, and it was all the wrong information. It was medical model stuff. So it was telling me that I was disordered, that I was, you know, I had impairments, and that I, you know, didn't have empathy, that all those things that, you know, all those stereotypes that we were trying to, you know, the myth bust. So what I started to do was create appliques. I don't really know, I can't even remember why now. I think maybe I was doing it with my students at the time, but kind of about my experience of that. And that developed into making costumes for Adventures of Super Autie Girl, and kind of talking about my experience of being autistic. The other picture in this slide is actually at the bottom, is a performance that I created really at the beginning of my discovery journey as an autistic person. And I basically wrote all the words, all the labels that people had given me over the years, all the negative language that was taught to me. You know, a big one for me was lazy, you know, standoffish. I think there's another slide with that somewhere, but I wrote all that on my body with a Sharpie marker. And during the whole performance of Super Autie Gang and Super Autie Girl, there's two performances, but the final one was Gang, because it's cool to be in a community. And that's kind of what we all talk about. And at the end of the performance, I take off my costume and I'm naked on stage. Luckily, when there's no nudity in these pictures, but I'm naked on stage to show the vulnerability, but also to say that, you know, it's really hard to kind of wander around with all these words and all this negative kind of, you know, an experience of internalized ableism, really. And I use those words on myself. And then I actually ask audience members to write some words on my back to kind of show how complicit we are, and that, you know, talking to each other and ourselves all the time, and kind of putting these labels on us. And then I scrub those words off my body. And it's very painstakingly hard to scrub Sharpie marker off, and it makes you go red. And it was kind of to symbolize how difficult it is to kind of pull away from that internalized ableism and stop using those words against myself, and stop thinking about myself in that way, that I was broken. So yeah, and I really, that became part of my PhD. It developed into, you know, where we are now, really, kind of exploring those works. So a couple more slides. I think there's another one. Yeah, so here's a few more images of Adventures of Super Autie Gang. As part of the performance, I wrote a letter to Simon Baron-Cohen talking about how he'd really let the autistic community down with his research, and kind of still continuing to say that, you know, that all autistic people were male-brained, and, you know, that therefore I was one of those lost autistic people who didn't discover they were autistic until they were in their 40s. And, you know, there's people much older than me that haven't discovered. And so, yeah, I wrote this letter, and I tried to memorize it, but I realized during Super Autie Gang that I thought it would be really great to actually show. I'd be like, I'm masking. I actually can't remember this text. So Chloe came out with the text and held it up for me to read out And that's an image of Chloe doing that. But yes, it's more images. Chloe doing a PowerPoint, because that was the way Chloe felt comfortable on stage performing, you know, about their experience. And if you do the next slide, yeah, see these some of the very first appliques that I made, and I just had a real reaction to all the negative stuff that I was reading within the medical model. And I thought, you know, I want to say autism is awesome, but now I would say autistic people are awesome, much more likely. But this was done in 2014, I think, quite a long time ago. And one more slide. It just, oh no, that was it, I guess. Okay, I thought there was another slide. Okay, so I'll talk about So You're Autistic and ADJ later, but I want to hear about everybody else's kind of exploration of you know, their autistic discovery. Victoria, I think you were going to share some slides too. Yeah.
Ben has the slides, hopefully. I won't go into all the words. My journey began sort of later in life, in my 40s, and I'd always struggled sort of with mental ill health, and for a number of years throughout, mainly since my sort of late teens, 20s, being prescribed antidepressants. And I kept saying I wasn't depressed, I was just overwhelmed and couldn't cope with life. And it was like being on a merry-go-round. Everything was too fast, too bright. And I just wanted it all to stop and slow down. And it just got faster. So if you could, next slide. And these are a lot of the works, the doodles that I sort of did before I realized I was autistic. And I very much felt alone. At the time, I was down south in Maidenhead. I'm originally from the northeast. And I wanted to return back to the sea and back to where it was quiet. And it was almost reflecting on sort of my life, and I didn't understand much about it, about who I was. We go to the next slide. This is some of like early collage work. I was actually formally identified in 2017. I believed at the time I sort of started looking through my daughter's experience, revisiting the research in autism, and started relating a lot more to it. But at the time, I just really sort of believed I was sort of broken. I hadn't discovered the autistic community. I hit burnout just after the day I was diagnosed, and slowly I started to rediscover art again. And the first picture is collaging using clothing labels, because I can't stand them. At the time, I didn't understand anything about sensory differences. I just had to cut them out. And it was sort of a play on words, finding peace with the label and finding peace with this sort of new almost discovery about myself, which made sense finally. At the time, I didn't have contact. The community, a lot of it was through large, somewhat questionable charities, which I sort of got hooked into, which I didn't, because I didn't know what was going on. And I found that the creative process, I didn't have to use words because I didn't have the words. And it was just a way of focusing and zoning out from what was quite a difficult time. Go on to the next one. And yeah, this was one of the first sewing pieces that I did, and this was again before I discovered. This was when my children was younger, and it was almost like the child within, and exploring who I was within myself, and almost nurturing the child that didn't know anything, and through doing that, sort of gaining some freedom. And I read this book about exploring the threads of life, about sewing, and it says sewing's a way to mark our existence on cloth, patterning our place in the world, voicing our identity, sharing something of ourselves with others, and leaving the indelible evidence of our presence in stitches held fast by our touch. And for me, a big part of it was sensory. It was the detail. It just brought some balance into my life. Next one. And I returned to, I moved back from the southeast of England to the northeast, hoping for a quieter life. Yeah, we shall see. 4 years in and it's not quiet. And this is some of the early work sort of that I did, returning to starting to explore different textures with stitch. Go to the next one. I started getting involved in local community arts groups when I moved, trying to desperately to connect and socialize. There was still a lot of ableism. And then I entered this award about, it was a competition, wasn't about, you had to put in an idea for a art piece of art, and then you were asked, if you were a finalist, to then make up the piece. So I did Living with Waves, and it really basically at the time was my way of working through a lot of things that had happened and trying to understand. I'd started to sort of explore more about autistic identity. So I've gone to the next one. It's the first piece I did. It's about 1 meter by 1 meter. It's currently on loan, and it's a textile hand embroidered mandala piece. It sort of incorporates everyday objects, materials, including medication leaflets, because at the time I was still on all the medication, and I was beginning to realize that it wasn't for me. It was hampering my life. I'm not against medication, but this just wasn't working for me. And I'd relocated back to the northeast. I'd hit burnout because every effort had gone into moving back here, hoping for this peaceful life, and it wasn't quite working out. And it looks at different aspects of my identity. If you go on to the next bit. And again, it's sort of going against the medical model of mental health and things, ill health and things like that. And I was sort of stitching through all these labels and things that that have all the side effects and things like that. And it was almost finding a different way to be, and a more natural way of doing things for me, opposed to taking all these medications, and which had just, all of these things had just become part of me and were preventing me from being creative because of some of the side effects. And the piece is based on spoon theory, which is looking at the way that we have a limited as disabled people amount of energy, and how we have to always count spoons and be aware of things. But with this, the spoons were all sort of representing different issues I was facing at the time and exploring. So there were things, myths and things about you don't look autistic. It was a lot of the things that I was being said to me at the time. And there was sort of initially with it, there was a lot of uniformity, like a mandala, but then it got slightly chaotic. And it was sort of, that was how I felt when I was going into sensory overload. I was learning what sensory overload was because I didn't know. I didn't know any of these things that were happening. And at the time, there was the spiraling. Like, I'm always being drawn to spirals and things like that. And it represented how a lot of the time throughout my life I kept spiraling downwards and all the negative thoughts going on because I didn't know about ADHD. I didn't identify with it. I didn't realize those thoughts, a lot of that was related to it. And I was learning to accept things and regulate myself. And I was discovering that slow stitching for me was a way of doing that and absorbing and a sort of escaping and finding a different way of being that didn't involve words. the next bit. And it did get a bit more cheerful, a bit more colourful. It wasn't all doom and whatever. And it was just, and it says take me away to a place in my mind where no one can tell me what's wrong and not right. And no one can decide what's good or bad. And no one can tell me what to do, what to use. And it doesn't really matter what you do. It really doesn't matter. And what will be, will be. And I started, and this is some of the recent work that I've done. And I get a lot of reports lately in my life and throughout my life. And there's all these words and all these things that are said in these reports. And when you're applying for benefits, you come across non-stop all these reports, and they overtake things. And they almost become you when that is not you, and that isn't what it is to be autistic. And it was a way of bringing myself back. And the second piece is almost the sea. The sea always brings me back to me and the patterns and watching it. And the whole process is sort of coming back to who I am. And that's not broken or all these things that are said about me. The next bit. And I started using artwork to explore the past, to connect to a lot of things I couldn't talk about, that I had no words for and very little memory. And I started looking at photos, and it was my way of almost connecting the past with who I am and starting to look at things sort of from a different perspective. And through Stitch, I was able to sit with sort of uncomfortable things and memories. And it was my way of looking at it and sort of seeing things differently. And seeing that child and noticing, looking at the photos and seeing the way my hands were, and it was just connection. And because I'd moved back to where I now live and to the past, it has been quite difficult and a lot has come up. And this was my way of sort of processing all that and being in the now. And to the next bit. And then it got a bit weird. I've got to admit, it's got a bit weird. And I started combining collaging and digital art. And again, there is sort of the second on the right is like spirals. It was taken from like a spiral staircase. And again, it's relating to spirals and how dizzy and I would get and disorientated, and spiral staircases have always terrified me. And I started playing around with images digitally and a lot of repetition and patterns. And the eyes terrify me. Looking into people's eyes terrify me. But it was also looking back on the past. And the next one. And a lot of my work now, sort of stitching, has become a lot more abstract, a lot more flowing, sort of a lot less controlled. And that's gradually how I sort of my way of letting go of it and having a bit of freedom. Because at the moment, this is the place where I can be free. Next bit. And this is some of the recent stuff. The picture on the right was taken, I finally got to see the fjords a few years ago. And the water and the power of the water, it just meant a lot to me. And the one on the left is sort of me looking back at sort of parenting and the last sort of 12, 13 years, which have been difficult, and how much of that has been overtaken by a lot of things that had happened in my life, and sort of reflecting back on that. So I sort of use artwork. It's almost like a therapy to me. And it's an important part of my life.
Thanks so much, Victoria. It's really interesting to see so many similarities actually in our work, and the use, how language is so important, and our understanding of that as autistic people. and kind of trying to change the narrative for ourselves. And also using our dedicated interests to explore our autistic, journey. And I think I'm sure Sai was saying in the chat, which is a private chat, but they were just saying they identify with a lot of it. And I think that's quite interesting because they're an artist as well. So, it's only natural for an artist to then, look at their own work and look at themselves and, explore those things. And I think, without my dedicated interest of being an artist, I don't know where I would be. And that's incredibly important to me. And for me, it was about going from being a person with autism to the autistic community and basically me and Chloe created an autistic community. And that's how I met Chloe, and that's, and we've gone from strength to strength in that way. And Chloe created Aucademy, and we're all along for the ride, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, let's hear about other people's, how they've explored their autistic experience. Anyone?
Am I okay to go next?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, that was a little bit emotional listening to Victoria's because it's very similar, minus the children. Being diagnosed later, I was officially diagnosed in 2019. Started looking into it in 2017, but the lead up to that was decades of what I thought was depression. I'm sure there was lots of depression in there, but mostly burnout looking back. And something I've learned recently or this year is a big thing that happened in 2015 where I classify myself as having a mental breakdown. And looking at it now, it's more likely to be some sort of psychotic event or psychotic experience, and it actually ties into a lot of my earlier experiences, where just the stress and pressure of trying to fit in has basically led my mind to try and protect itself. But, so I explored myself a lot in. It's hard for me to say art because I don't really class myself as an artist. It's difficult for me to say that, but I do like to make ornaments, and I've made all sorts of things. And I love nature. Like I've always lived by the sea. I've never ever lived more than maybe 5 miles, if that, inland. There's something I feel really powerful about nature and the sea. I always end up drawn to it, even no matter what the weather is. If it's a nice day, I'll go out. If it's raining, I'll go out because I know there's no one else out there, and I love actually being in the rain. And so I like to, and the art that I do, it always seems to incorporate some sort of nature. I will make it look like leaves, or I will make it some sort of animal. Where else was I going with this? But yeah, exploring my autistic experience and self, it was through finally being diagnosed where I started to meet actual autistic people, which was Chloe at a Autistic Pride, and I forgot what I was going to say now. But yeah, I'm still learning a lot about myself, and if it wasn't for being in the autistic community, I don't think I would be very well at all. And yeah, it's still difficult, but with the support of friends and the autistic community, it's a lot easier. you know, they understand you, even silly things like phone calls. They just understand how difficult that is, just a phone call. And without those things, it's, you know, it's very lonely without other autistic people in a community. You do end up blaming yourself and blaming the autism when it's not. And I've forgotten about 214% of what I was going to say.
Well, I thought that was great. And I think Victoria says, anyone is an artist. Don't believe in gatekeeping. This, the sea is a natural power. I love the natural sound.
It is something I am trying to get back to because I've been away from it for a few years now. For the past few years, I've become increasingly disabled, mostly physically. And it's very difficult because my work is basically outside. And it's very difficult for me to be outdoors when it is physically demanding. So I do take the opportunity to just be outside in nature whenever I can.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing for a lot of us, Sai. And I think, that theme is coming through once again, that having the autistic community there to continue your journey, because I don't think an autistic discovery journey ends. It just you learn more and more and more about yourself as it goes on. So, that's really important to talk about, that actually is not, a certain amount of time, 5 years. And then you're, we talk about baby autistic. So when you first find out you're autistic, you're a baby autistic. But yeah, how long do you grow up? That takes a long time. Yeah. Oh, Victoria was saying that you explore through Canva. So you're making things on Canva and stuff. So more digital art now.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of... I've always loved imagery, and I do like to create things. It doesn't always pan out, but because I can't do the physical work as much as I'd like to, then I do put that onto my Canva in a way, and I like to do video editing, and I used to love to play around with music as well, which I need to try and get back into.
And you also did SYA with us at me and Chloe.
Yeah, that was a huge, what's the word? Opportunity. I suppose. Yes. If I hadn't gone through SYA, I wouldn't have. Just to be able to explore other people's experiences and my own experiences and what they actually meant, and learn all the things like alexithymia, where you have trouble understanding and recognizing your emotions. I've never, before going to that group, I never knew something like that.
Yeah, so that's something. Can I just say what SYA is, because we're talking about it and probably people don't. So it's so you're autistic, or you think you might be, and it's what the program that me and Chloe developed in 2018 for originally for the University of Kent, and we call it, it's a group program basically, where you have 8 weeks of autistic discovery with a very small group, 8 to 10 autistic people, and me and Chloe kind of put all the information together we wish we would have had when we found out we were autistic, and the things that we think were really important for autistic people to know about themselves, and also doing creative tasks. And I'll talk about that later, but just so people know what it is. Sorry. Yeah, so you were talking about learning about alexithymia and
all sorts of things, interoception, proprioception, all the words that nobody knows about, which is very weird for me now. Even only having learned them in the past few years, it's weird that I, come across and read about other autistics, not knowing anything about it. But then I was in that position, so. And it does help massively to know when you're not, why you struggle maybe to get to a toilet, or you struggle to remember to eat and drink. It allows you to be easier on yourself.
Definitely. Be kinder to yourself. Okay, so Sai, I'm wondering if you could voice for Libby. They've put something about their experience.
Libby says, I was lucky enough to find a community very early on in my discovery, and so I have largely explored my identity through my connections with others, actually autistic blogs, etc., UOKA, SYA, Aucademy, gathering as much knowledge as I can and seeing how I relate and differ. However, listening to everyone has made me realise I was exploring my identity before I knew I was autistic, such as through creative writing, as I was creating characters, worlds and stories that I could relate to but didn't. Hex? I don't know what the EX means.
Yeah. No, that's really important, I think.
Oh, there's a part two, but didn't exist in the world. There we go.
Stories that I could relate to but didn't exist in the world. Yeah, that's really important as well. And I think a lot of people, discover, or you start your discovery before you even know you're autistic. So through your dedicated interests, you end up exploring, your experience, not knowing that how different it is from neurotypical people, which is incredibly important. And just so you know, because once again, we like acronyms here. We also run an autistic social group through University of Kent. We have done since 2017. We started attending it, and then we took it over, me and Chloe, and we call it UOKA, which is University of Kent's Autistic Social Group, and that's kind of connected through with. So You're Autistic, or SYA, which is the more structured social program. But UOK is just creating an autistic space for people to come to on a regular basis. And we usually have a massive suitcase of STEM objects for people to kind of play with and explore, because a lot of times you don't know what STEM objects you like until you pick them up and realize, I don't like that because it's really icky. Or I really like the feel of this one. Wow, I had no idea. So that's really important, and kind of just, throwing out neurotypical rules when it comes to socializing. So making sure that, everyone realizes that all participation is valid. So you can sit and draw or play in your Switch or do something else while you're with everyone. Or you can, write things on a board instead of talking if you want to be engaged in the conversation. You don't have to stare people in the eyes, all those things that, normally are acceptable. You can have monologues and then listen to somebody else monologue. So yeah, is there anyone else that would like to talk about their autistic experience and how they explore it? David, fabulous.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in 2016 at the age of 26. And my mother had tried to have me diagnosed as a very young child and was rebutted as you're an over-anxious mother with too much knowledge of the subject, whatever that means. And so I didn't really fully discover the fact that I was autistic, not in a sense that was real to me, until that diagnosis came when I was 26, and it came after years of drug and alcohol addiction and psychosis from a schizophrenia-like condition that landed me in a psychiatric hospital twice. I felt like I was a nuisance everywhere I went. Even the professionals who worked with me, because obviously I had what they would call a severe psychiatric disorder, and they just acted like I was the biggest pain in their backside ever. And I was like, do you think I want to be like this? When I discovered I was autistic, though, my immediate reaction was, now I know why everything's wrong. It's because I'm autistic. You know, being autistic is the whole reason that everything is crap. And I'm not sure if I've ever admitted this publicly on a live before. If you search hard enough, my writing, because that's one of the ways I still explore my experiences, I actually said I'd be willing to take a cure if it was offered to me. And I've grown a lot since then, and I grew through another way that I explore my experience, which is just sort of being in the community, absorbing other people's experiences, reading everything, just everything. And that kind of informed my writing, and my writing became more fine-tuned and much more respectful of the fact that I'm neurodivergent, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. And I came to understand that being autistic wasn't what was at fault for the fact that things had gone wrong. It was the environment around me that was wrong. And it comes back to that old, you know, the Luke Bearden thing, autism plus environment equals outcome. And as my writing became more popular, I started doing stuff for Neuroclastic, and then Chloe scooped me up for Aucademy. And now I am a professional mentor, both self-employed and employed with Gecko Community. And mentoring has been really important for my own self-exploration, because, okay, yeah, a big part of mentoring is taking the knowledge that I already have and giving it to someone else to help them develop their self-advocacy. But actually, mentoring is a very reciprocal relationship. You know, it's very back and forth. There's no power imbalance. And I learn just as much from the adults and the young people that I mentor as I do from reading books and just other people's experiences. Like when I'm mentoring people, the number of times they'll say, oh, you know, I've been having this experience. And it'll be the first time I'll stop and think, actually, I have that experience too. And now that you've laid it out like that, I think I know why I'm having that experience. And so mentoring has been vital to my entire sense of self. And that sense of self has been, I mean, anyone who reads my writing knows I've got a bit of a thing about the whole sense of self. I talk about it quite a lot. And, you know, through my writing and my poetry and my mentoring, I've come to accept that who I am is good enough. It doesn't mean that everything's sunshine and rainbows or everything's really crap. It's just that, you know, it's not good or bad. It just is, you know, and that being able to explore myself in an introspective way through writing, whilst also exploring in a sort of outward way through other people's experiences, has been really important to that sense of well-being. And yeah, you know, it's done a lot for me. And I'm really pleased to, you know, have found people like Aucademy, who it's a community that's taken me in and given me a safe space to explore who I am away from societies, as we talked about, all those labels that society gives you, all those reports that society throws at you, all the prescriptions that society says this is going to make everything better, and then you're sort of like, well, it kind of helps, but no, it's not all better. You know, it's been really important as part of my self-exploration to have that safe space. And I don't just owe that to Aucademy, I owe that to everyone I've ever mentored as well.
Yeah, and I think I would definitely agree with that, David. From me, just doing the group support programs that Chloe and I have done, SYA and ADJ, and consulting myself on autistic experience with people, I've learned loads about myself. And we came up with do you think in pictures or not? And Chloe's been it's such an important thing to understand. And because I was an artist, I thought, well, of course I think in pictures. I'm a visual person. I'm very visual. Of course, how could I not? And it took me, I don't know, banging on about it for about a year before I realized, Annette, you don't think in pictures. But it took a really long time to kind of figure that out. And I was teaching it. So it's really interesting. It does take a lot of time and a lot of talking to other autistic people and hearing other people kind of voice your experience that you couldn't voice yourself or you didn't know how to describe yourself is incredibly important.
I think one of the things that a lot of the people I mentor don't realize is that they are inadvertently mentoring me as well. Because when I listen to the way they word things, it's not just me giving them language to self-advocate. I am also gaining a way of explaining my experience. It is reciprocal in nature. And it's very, there's something very nice about that back and forth you have in mentoring, where you're sharing experiences, and without one person being higher up than the other. And also, just to note, I'm really enjoying the fact that there's that whole idea that all autistic people are scientists, and we've got artist, poet. Like, this is brilliant. Like, just breaking down the stereotypes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I thought about when you were talking was that do we all, one of the things that happened to me when I found out I was autistic was all of a sudden autism and being autistic was my dedicated interest. It became, I researched the hell out of it. And I've talked to a lot of autistic people, and a lot of autistic people say, yeah, that's what happened. And I was even told, you're more autistic now than you were before. That was a big thing. And that's not because I was more autistic. It was more that I was learning about who I was as an autistic person, learning about that I was masking, or and that
I feel like that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years, since like 2007. Discovery, basically thinking I might be autistic. That's been my dedicated interest throughout, just learning about autistic experience. And like David was saying about learning from other people, I with my creativity side, I started exploring writing as well, and I was making posts, and obviously I could only put across my experience, but in the comments I was learning from others what maybe I was getting wrong about certain aspects of what I was talking about. But it was good to learn from other people as well.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if Sai, could you voice Ben's?
Yep. Ben says they had no clue what being autistic meant. I had a very rushed diagnosis at 17, 18, and then because I was 18, got booted out of CAMS as a child and adolescent mental health services, and was stranded with only one follow-up from the autism team, my local council. Then I met Chloe and Annette at university and discovered more about myself. I was fortunate enough to get scooped up into Aucademy, steal what I learned from all these amazing autistics and put into my own words, and I'm struggling now, on my own advocacy education page. I can't imagine doing anything else now. Yeah, I agree. It for me as well, it has led me to, like, this kind of area is what I want to do now. I struggled for decades to know what I wanted to do, and it is kind of education in a way, basically, about autistic and neurodivergent and social issues.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a bit more that Ben has underneath Victoria's comment.
posting and seeing the likes or comments or shares I get makes me feel validated. What I have to say matters and I'm worth listening to, which I haven't experienced before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's Ben's Autisticality Facebook page, or group. Is it a page? Yeah, it's a page. Yes. Which the famous potato is.
Has it got potato on it? I didn't know.
Really?
I've never been on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really important to kind of find what your find your path, I suppose. And for me, finding out I was autistic. I'd been an artist for 30 years and an art lecturer, but finding out I was autistic made me, think, okay, I want to use my skills to help other autistic people, and be a part of an autistic community, and make sure that nobody else has to go through, the 39 years of not knowing who I was or what was going on. Again, for the next generation.
It's a sense of needing to belong, but also the sense of justice as well. So the two combined lend itself very well to what we each do, really.
Yeah, great. Okay, so does anybody else want to say anything else about their experience before we move on? I'm going to talk about SYA, UOK, and ADJ, which are group programs that Chloe and I have been running since 2018. Okay, fabulous. So, so this is basically a program that Chloe and I put together because we didn't want other autistic people to have to sift through the myriads of negative stuff online to find out about themselves as autistic people. So we kind of thought these are the most important things that autistic people need to know. And one of the most important things was being part of a community. So we felt it was really important that it was a small group of people, not too big that it'd be overwhelming, but 8 to 10 people, to be able to explore what it means to be autistic together. And yeah, it's an 8-week program. And yeah, I mean, basically what we really talked about as well is that, we've supported about 70 plus autistic students between 2018 and 2022. And, these are autistic people, but they also have co-occurring other issues that are going on as well. And a lot of the time, the student support and well-being would be sending the people to us who nothing else had helped. And they're like, well, maybe you're autistic. And which is quite interesting. I don't think we've ever had anybody that's come to SYA that actually wasn't autistic in the end. They all ended up, discovering that, yes, definitely, or getting a diagnosis that they were. So, so we worked with lots of different people with different kind of challenges that they had in relation, a lot of times, to, like David was saying, the environment and how autistic people are treated more than actually in relation to being autistic. So next slide. So one of the things that was really important, a part of SYA, is to give people information, to create a community for people to talk about their experiences with other autistic people going through the same thing, but also to have kind of a creative outlet and to really emulate or create something that represented a positive experience of being autistic. And so one of the things that we did was based on my PhD and the appliques that I did way back in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and got other people to, so one of the things that people do is actually come up with a positive kind of representation of their experience of being autistic. And then I taught people how to applique. And people, we did the appliques as a group, which was also really great because it was like a sewing circle kind of thing where you don't have to look anybody in the eye, you're doing something else. And a lot of times that makes it much easier to be social and talk to people and talk about things. So we've got some examples of the appliques that people have done over the years. One is Autistic Good, which is on a sweatshirt. And I love it when people put things on clothes, so they can actually wear the clothes and be proud of being autistic. But that relates to, I'm pretty sure, is it Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. And then we've got another person who, they just one of their nicknames was the Great Autismo. So they applied that onto a pillow, which was quite cool. And I've got a few more examples of what people have done over the years. Okay, Chloe, I can't remember what this first one represents. It's in Latin, or is it Greek? Know thyself, yes. I always forget what this one says, but this one's a know thyself. And then we've got expressive, which is obsession and expression put together, which I thought was quite good. So a lot of times people created new words or stimmy words. So shiny pebble was kind of a stimmy word that was one of the people who was part of the project's word that they wanted to emulate and applique. And then we've got Chloe's sausages, because Chloe loves the word sausage. So she appliqued that. And I think that's Ben's up there, awesome, which is on a pillowcase. Which so you always wanted it so you could sleep at night and remember, that being autistic is quite awesome, actually. We've got Cool to Care was another one that somebody made, and Embrace Your Weird, which I love. And I think Jessica did Find Your Weird, and then I Found My Weird on pillowcases, which was quite nice as well. And then Sunbow was another good one, another kind of made up autistic stimmy word. Yeah, fabulous. Oh, I've got more. But you get that, we've got bumfuzzle, which is another stimmy word, Autie mash. A lot of times things related to people's dedicated interests. So we've got pure AU, which relates to, is it gold? I'm thinking, yes. And then obviously being autistic. And I love this artistic autistic, which is like super hard to even say, but fabulous. And that was on a t-shirt. And gosh, I can't even read that one. I feel bad. We can skip it. Move on to the next one. Next slide, please. And then we went online during the pandemic, and it was very difficult to teach people how to applique online. So I just basically said people could do anything creative, which really opened it up, actually. So people could write a poem, they could write a song, they could do digital art, they could create a meme, they could do a painting. So we had lots of different versions of that, but this is just an example of someone who created an autistic tarot card, which is really great and kind of showed a lot of their, in a way, their own little profile. So it talked about their special interests, stimming, sensory processing, and their love of astrology and psychology and music, which I thought was really great. And then we got a couple more examples just of different things. So extra, I'm once again dyslexic as well as somebody help me here. How do we pronounce this? I think
extraordinary.
It's like, yes, extraordinary. This is someone who actually runs SYA with me, and they love dragons as well and trees. So that was a painting that they created. And one more, I think, which is Libby's. I hope they're okay with me showing this. But another kind of meme of sometimes it is the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine, which is from the Imitation Game. Yes, which is a film. And yeah, lots of people that we probably think were probably autistic from the past, which is quite cool and a really cool example of that creative autistic way, and all sorts of different things. So next slide. Yes. So this is a few testimonies. I mean, we've heard some testimonies today, but I'll just quickly go through some testimonies of SYA. So next slide, please. So we kind of had survey at the end of the SWA that we asked people to kind of comment about their experience. And we said, what previously isolated autistic people achieved in autistic peer groups? So what do you enjoy and get out of SWA, and why did you continue to go? Meeting other people who get it and have similar experiences and don't judge you at all. Feels like everything is clicking into place, and I feel more comfortable calling myself autistic. It's much better than what I've managed to find online before, as everyone has real life experiences in being autistic. And we just said, do you feel SWA has helped you in any way? Can you describe in what way at all? And they said, yes, definitely. I feel much more able to be openly autistic and realize it's fine that I am the way I am. Just because my limits and strengths are different to other people doesn't make me any less of a person. I feel more confident generally, and I'm able to be much kinder to myself because I feel my problems are valid. So that's kind of some testimony from SWA from different students that went through the program. And the next slide. And then we've got just a little bit more. How do you feel about the idea of being autistic prior to attending SWA? And they said, it stops me from ever being normal or fitting in, and stops me from doing things that I want to do. It's a weakness and an excuse not to be able to do things. And then we asked them, how do you currently feel about being autistic? And they said, currently, it's okay to be different. There are other people who will understand me, and it's okay to need help with things or need to do things differently. I have my own strengths that other people don't. And they just also said, it's been so beneficial to me, and I'm so glad I took part. I thought I could be autistic on my own, and no one had to really know. And now I want to tell people and find more people who will relate to the things that I do. And I think that's something we all experience, that we actually want to find more autistic people and people that we can relate to. And that's what Aucademy is all about. And yes, so your Autistic Discovery Journey program. So we're actually putting this out now. We're going to do a pilot run of, we're calling it ADJ, which is based on SYA and everything that we've learned over the last, well, what is it, 4 or 5 years? Yeah. So yeah, and we're gonna do an online version with adults who are interested in going through the Autistic Discovery Journey, but I'll just talk a little bit about it. So next slide. So, I mean, one of the things that we discovered is that, and what people have talked about is there's, very long waiting lists for assessment for children and their families, adolescents and adults when it comes to any kind of support or diagnosis. Not that you need a diagnosis. We feel that discovery is just as important. So there's no support while waiting, no post-diagnosis support for those diagnosed. Young people have no understanding of what diagnosis means, coping mechanisms, etc. And just how important it is for shared community, and that there's really protective properties of identity, community, and shared spaces. All protective properties for autistic well-being. And that's really, really important, is that, if you have a positive autistic identity, if you are part of an autistic community, that and a shared space with other autistic people, it's more likely that your well-being will become better. So the next slide. And this is basically saying what David was talking about as well. So, what good support looks like for autistic people is usually done by other autistic people. Neurodivergent friendly environments at baseline. So it's the environment plus autistics equals the outcome. And supporting autistic people to foster a positive autistic identity via autistic culture and finding autistic community in space. And once again, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And that's incredibly important, and so much about what we want to do. So the next slide. Okay. Yeah. And really, it's quite important for autistic people, once again, autistic identity, culture, community, and spaces for well-being. A lot of autistic people, usually because of the way that we're treated within society, experience co-occurring conditions like anxiety, depression. A lot of people talked about these things today: PTSD, invalidation trauma, self-harm, or harmful stimming. And ultimately, when you're part of an autistic community and you have a positive autistic identity, it improves that well-being. So you're know about the neurodiversity narrative, and you've adopted that instead of the medical model, and that you're part of the community and part of peer support, and that stimming and how important that is for well-being, and how it's important for us to take stimming back as autistic people and relearn how we stim, and being part of those autistic spaces and being able to be our autistic selves within those autistic spaces. Next slide. Okay, so the purpose, I'm almost done here. The purpose of the Autistic Discovery Journey program is basically to contextualize your experience with the new knowledge that you are or might be autistic. Perhaps you're not sure and can't see how you are autistic. So that's totally valid as well. It's all different people at different parts of their discovery can be a part of the Autistic Discovery Journey. And it teaches you about the neurodiversity narrative, opposing the disorder narrative, and shows us how we all have challenges and strengths. And that's incredibly important to realize that, oh, I've got challenges, but I also have strengths as an autistic person. And I need to find ways to accommodate those challenges so that I can focus on my strengths. So you're working out where you are in your discovery journey, and you're holding space for you, whatever stage you're at. And you're building your knowledge and awareness of your personal neurodivergent profile. What makes you you? And that's incredibly important, to know as much information as possible about what makes you you. And that's kind of what ADJ is all about. So the next slide. Other things, learning how to communicate your needs and boundaries is incredibly important. A lot of autistic people we talk to actually don't even understand what are boundaries. I can have boundaries. I didn't realize I could have boundaries. That's incredibly important. Learning accommodating strategies, including stimming, and how to improve your well-being, and finding others with whom you share commonalities and feeling a part of a community. Sharing resources to help to avoid the mountains of information online, and improving self-esteem and well-being. Feeling proud to be autistic, and I think that's incredibly important. And next one. Yeah, and this is just the kind of the sessions that we are doing for ADJ. So we've got session 1, introducing a session to ADJ, and we talk about the 6 common reactions of the autistic discovery. Session 2, we're exploring in more detail what being autistic means, autistic experience, gender and sexuality diversity as well, which is so much a part of the community. A lot of autistic people tend to be part of the queer community. Session 3, starting to build awareness of your neurodivergent profile, and that's through your sensory experience. And we talk all about autistic sensory experience and all the different types of senses that a lot of times we don't even think about, like I can't remember the word now. Oh, what is it? Internal interoception, which what Sai was talking about earlier when he said, oh, that's why I can't always make it to the bathroom. Don't have very good interoception, but that could be all sorts of other things. And then session 4 is continuing to build your awareness of your neurodivergent profile, the wonderful world of stimming and autistic joy. And that's incredibly important to realize, oh, there's autistic joy and how amazing that is, and how the capacity for autistic people to experience joy, and how stimming can be a big part of that. Session 5 is about shielding and masking, autistic overwhelm, meltdown, shutdown, and burnout. And session 6 is about autistic creativity and language and being kind to ourselves. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And that's how we start that creative task that we ask people to do. And then session 7 is on autistic cognition, how autistic brains work. And we look at all sorts of things like whether you think in pictures, whether you might be alexithymic or not be able to describe your own emotions or kind of understand your own emotions. but also things like autistic communication and how autistic people tend to communicate differently, as well as, you know, the experience of situational mutism and things like that. And then the last session is about self-advocacy and boundary setting, which is incredibly important as an autistic person to be able to advocate for yourself and create boundaries with other people. And we wrap up and we have a little autistic celebration at the end, which it obviously is like a really quiet party. And we give out certificates, which welcomes people to the autistic community. And quite a few people have actually framed those and put them up instead of their diagnosis, which really didn't welcome them to the autistic community at all. Yeah, so I think that's the last slide, isn't it, Ben? I hope it is. Good, my God. Yeah, so that's ADJ. And yeah, we're really excited to bring that out. Oh, there's Ben's certificate. Fabulous. I love it. Oh, Sai has theirs as well. Oh, that makes me really happy.
I've just realised Libby hasn't got theirs.
No. But Libby does have theirs, just not with them. Yeah, so I mean, I think what we were going to talk about next really is about autistic consulting and coaching or mentoring, and I think peer support as well, because Aucademy, you're all involved in the social groups that Aucademy does, particularly with Sai, Ben, and Victoria, and kind of the learning that goes on in those groups as well. I think would be interesting to talk about. Is anybody? Or I could talk some more. That's okay. Victoria, go ahead. Yes.
I think it's been a bit of a journey with sort of the social group on Aucademy, and we sort of learned different. At the beginning, it was just a bit of free for all, just sort of, but it was a way of people connecting on their terms and things like that. But gradually, as we went along, we sort of realized that people needed to know what was happening and for there to be a structure, and then sort of moved over to things that had been learned from UA.
UOKA, yeah. Yeah. Especially during the pandemic, because it was like, okay, we have this social group, you know, we had it in person at the university, and then it was like, okay, what do we do? How do we do this online? Which opened it up, really, didn't it? I mean, you've got people.
Well, for me, yeah, it hugely, in some respects, the pandemic was a massive bit of a blow, but in other ways, it opened a world and enabled me to connect with the autistic community and be aware of what was going on, and had almost reduced so much of the isolation of what wasn't available in person, and got me through a lot of hard times. And then from that, almost enabled me to connect with others and be able to relate. And the structure for me was quite good, because my brain and my memory is quite poor, and just knowing what was going to happen next was quite important, because me and starting conversations isn't great.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, the reason, yeah, it's really interesting, because I think Zoom and having socials on Zoom has brought it so that it's much more accessible for everyone. So for situationally mute people, or people who just don't feel comfortable talking, not only do they not have to have, you know, their face on screen, they can be black, or they can use a filter like Libby, our fabulous vampire potato, and that they can be in these spaces, you know, in a way that they're comfortable, and use the chat. And, you know, the chat sometimes takes over, which is amazing, you know, and I get like lost. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happened?
Yeah, and it's like the chat, the whole social, which Ben can testify, has been done in chat as not spoken, not using mouth words. And I think that is important. And you can have transcription, you can have the subtitles on. So all modes are sort of catered for with regards to processing.
And it shows how relatively easy it can be done. Like different forms of communication. Even not yesterday, a couple of days, I don't know, this week, the doctors want to contact me again because it's always through the phone, and I've had enough of the phone. I said, I can't use the phone anymore. Can you contact me by other means? And they just said, we don't have any other means. Like text, email? Oh, no, it has to be on the phones. What if I literally cannot speak? What if I'm, mute? Oh, yes, well, we have other means. Right, well, use it. You have other means and use it.
Yeah, people don't think about that. And that's what I find so hard, going back sort of out of these spaces and back to the in-person. And it's almost like you're tied, all your freedom has gone. And although it is empowering to have those spaces, it's then realizing how disabling the systems are, and that it isn't about being autistic. It is how literally these systems are not set up because they just don't realize.
Yeah. David, you had something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say on the topic of Aucademy social spaces, what I've really liked is, much in the same way I've been on a journey of self-exploration, the social groups that Aucademy run have been on a collective journey of self-exploration. And for me, I came to the realization that whilst I was attending the social groups as like a way of rebuilding spoons, being around other autistic people to improve my own well-being, each of us that attends those social groups, whether we realize it or not, it's an act of service, because by being there and being present for other autistic people in a way that is accessible to them, it's such a vital service to give to our fellow autistic people. And so the group has, as is necessary, had to go on its own journey of self-exploration. What are we trying to achieve here? What are people wanting to get from this group? How can we make sure that we are meeting the needs of people who are attending the group? And, I think that's a really wonderful thing. The fact that, a lot of groups I've been a part of prior to finding the autistic community, they eventually fall apart because of infighting and lack of accommodation and competing needs. But I really feel that with the Aucademy social groups, even when there are competing needs, we find a way of meeting the needs. Even if other people sort of go into breakout rooms and attend to their own needs, in a smaller group, they can still have the option of coming back to the group when that need has been met. No one is isolated. No one is ejected. We are genuinely a group of autistic people who just want the best for our fellow autistic people. And it's so refreshing, because so often in my life, groups I've been a part of have the people running them have been kind of self-serving. They have an agenda, and it's really difficult trying to get anything decent out of the group when things are run like that. But you can tell that the people who facilitate these groups, and I know Victoria and Sai especially, and Ben, as have all been very good facilitators of this group, and the time and effort they put into making sure that everyone feels heard, that no one feels like they're not important. It's incredible. And obviously it's not just the three of them who facilitate. There are lots of other facilitators as well who don't necessarily, appear on these lives. The people behind these groups have had to go through such a journey, I think, with, how are we going to run these groups? How is it that we are going to make sure that every autistic person here comes away feeling like they gained something rather than lost something? Because socializing as an autistic person, we always think of it as a spoons depleting activity, but something about those social groups, and I've got to say, a lot of it comes down to the facilitators, something about those social groups often gives me back spoons. And that's not something I've ever had with socializing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we had to make it doable for the facilitators as well. So that, you know, that's why Victoria and I, you know, and looked at what I'd done with UOKA and made a structure there, and thought, well, we need to do this for Aucademy as well, so that the facilitators, you know, aren't in kind of chaos, and that they can go, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and there's a structure, and I can follow that, and everything will be okay. You know,
I think it's also knowing that that is your fallback. And it almost gives you the confidence that you don't have to follow it, but it's almost like a safety net, that there still is the scope to put your own individual personality and way of facilitating onto that. And I think that's important, because we all have different ways, and other people can relate to those different ways. And it's giving that versatility. Is that a word? I don't know.
Yeah.
That I think is important for Aucademy.
Yeah, and I think you know, we talked about, we do happy and sad octopus, or weird octopus, or meh octopus, and that we kind of developed that because we hated the thing of introducing each other or saying, how are you feeling? You know, that's the worst question for an autistic person. So being able to kind of relate it to the octopus that we all know and love, but also, you know, that, you know, people can talk about, you know, and everyone has an opportunity to do that, whether they do it in the chat or they do it with mouth words, or they can pass, you know, but, you know, having that opportunity and that kind of structure really helps me even to run a social group.
The thing I love about the social groups is that they're not just an autistic environment, they're an autistic ecosystem. Like, every person who attends plays a role in how that ecosystem works, you know. And when you know, not the same people attend every week, you know, sometimes someone might have to drop out for something and you might have a new person, and each person brings something different to, and I like this idea of autistic ecosystems, you know, where every autistic person in the community has a cumulative effect on how that, you know, everyone plays their part. And I much prefer thinking of it as an ecosystem than cogs in a machine, because machines and computers, everyone talks about autistic people having a different operating system, and I think that's really dehumanizing.
Yeah.
I like the idea that we're more of as a community, we're more of an ecosystem where we're all, you know, we're all people, you know, and we bring something to the environment, and the environment is informed by that ecosystem that we've created as individuals.
Yeah, and I think, Victoria, can I read what you said in the chat, just about, because you said it gave back a purpose when I felt I'd lost this following burnout, you know, being able to run the social group. And I think that's really important as well, you know. And Sai, is it okay if I read what you said?
What did I say?
It says you gave me some confidence back.
Yes.
Well, I read it now. But, you know, I think that's important as well, you know, that once again, what David was talking about, that, like, you know, mentoring or running social groups, you know, and part of that autistic journey is also that, you know, helping other autistic people and working with other autistic people and being a part of that ecosystem gives us, you know, gives us spoons. For the first time in our lives, you know, social situations are giving us energy and, you know, giving us confidence and, you know, purposes. And I think that's incredibly important.
When I started doing the socials, especially because I was basically thrown into it, it's like, here's the social, get on with it. And so I just had to get on with it. But I struggled a lot, I still do. But being on camera, that was very new to me, and being in front of people. And even now, like, normally I would maybe have the pigeon filter on, but I've been growing in confidence to be able to be on here without more of a filter. So you know, just doing these socials has given me confidence to be, as bad as I communicate, confidence to be around other people. Are we all doing the octopus now?
Oh, I love it.
I'm going to have to go out and get an octopus.
Yeah.
But
And I think, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, Aucademy social groups and, you know, being around other autistic people and getting into mentoring, I didn't realize I was building a career until you know, it was like last week when I officially went self-employed, and I was like, all right, so apparently, like, I professionally mentor people now. Like, and that was really cool because I couldn't have had that without having the experience of the autistic community. I was empowered to self-advocate, and I was empowered to do it in such a way that I can now go out and help other people advocate for their needs, their struggles, their strengths, their boundaries. And that was a really cool experience. And I wouldn't have been able to have that without things like the autistic, you know, like the Aucademy social groups and like all of the stuff that Aucademy has put out there. And that's what's really cool about these autistic spaces is, you know, that it, as a group, we're a group of people who, you know, we're often not given the privilege of being employed because of various reasons. And yet, for me, like, the experiences I've had in the social group and being mentored and mentoring meant that I was able to actually take something which a lot of people said, well, that's a lovely hobby for you, David. And I'm like, well, screw you, because I'm not going to have it as a hobby. I'm going to make an entire career out of it. Yeah. Like,
it is amazing, you know, just me and Chloe meeting each other in an autistic social group all those years ago. You know, I had no idea what was going to happen and that all the things that we were going to do and all the amazing autistic people. You know, I just wanted to build an autistic community, and you know, we've slowly done that, and it's been an amazing journey, and it still will be a journey. We'll continue to learn about ourselves and to learn about other autistic people. And, you know, it's life-changing. It's been life-changing for me. And I think, you know, I started consulting as well back in January. So I consult for Aucademy on autistic experience. And I was just thrown into the deep end as well. But I love it. And I love learning and meeting other autistic people and being able to kind of see people grow into self-advocates, and people being able to put boundaries in place, and that's just makes my heart sing. And I think go ahead.
That's what I like about. Go on, pass it up.
I was just going to say life-changing is the right word, because like 7 years ago, I was a down on his luck drug addict, just finding sobriety in and out of psych wards, and now, like, I have a job that I love and a community that I adore and people who get me, and I don't feel isolated anymore. Like, I feel like I'm part of something.
Yeah.
Yay!
I do think of it often as myself as literally saving my life. I generally don't think I would be here if it wasn't for Chloe and Annette and Aucademy. Can't remember what else I was going to say now.
That's enough.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. The fact that you and Aucademy in general, we don't, you know, if you can do a job, then we let you do the job. It doesn't matter if you've got loads of qualifications or you haven't. If you want to do something, then have a go.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a good place to stop, and kind of think about next week, which is, what is it, Sci-Fi Week? Sci-Fi Live? Is that right? Yes. Talk about sci-fi. Okay, fabulous.
I think several of us on here are going to be back for that, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. And kind of end with our, you know, question that we always ask, which is, what is your current STEM or your current favorite STEM? Libby is an octopus now, which is quite awesome. Does anybody want to share their favorite STEM?
Do you want to go first, Victoria?
Mine is, for a few weeks now, it's been nail varnish. don't know if you can see them. They're actually a bit chipped. I really like that one.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Is that like a crack?
This one's for Ben.
The middle finger.
Can't see because it's quite dark. But yeah, they're very stimmy to do and just to look at and even feel, because sometimes they're even nice and soft and like satiny, but sometimes because of the different glittery stuff, they can be a little bit rough and sharp sometimes. So got the different textures and visually and what's the word for touch?
Tactile?
Yeah. Very stimmy. So, and I think my next adventure might be makeup. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we've got. David, do you want to go with yours? Because I know what it is.
It's my squishy. I've squished it so much it's more like a sack than a ball now, but it's I can't put it down. It's for like the last week. It's just been in my hand almost constantly. Like I can't stop. I just squish it and squeeze it, and it's just amazing. Like it's been in my hand the whole time we've been on this live. Like it's I don't know how to describe it. There's just something about the way it feels that's just so calming. It's like a stress ball but better. And yeah, it's my favorite thing at the moment. I do also have a clicky clacky plastic thing where you can click the thing into different. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, I've got one of those, and you can click it into different shapes and stuff. And yeah, it's really cool. But this is my thing at the moment.
Wow, I'm the same. I have one, but it's got spikes on it. I don't know if you can see.
I might have to go and look for a spiky one because
yeah, it was only £1.
Yeah, this cost me £1 in Pound Stretcher.
Yeah, it's great, and it hasn't fallen apart. I mean, I'm kind of known for popping things, and it's not actually fallen apart yet. I stim quite vigorously.
Yeah, you see, I think mine has suffered this week because it's gone from being a ball to being a sack. But in my defence, like I said, I went self-employed last week, and I've been very spoons-heavy activities. So it's literally been taking the brunt of my lack of spoons. But I kind of like it like a sack, so
nice.
Does the job.
Oh. Yeah. Victoria? Ooh, you said cake and cookies. Oh, what? Ooh!
What is that?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Wow.
Is that like an alien with eyes that you squint out? That's so awesome. I love it.
It makes me smile. Something has to.
Where did you get that?
Yeah. I saw it on Amazon, I think.
Oh, Amazon. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was one of those Instagram reels I saw, and it was like, ooh.
I want that. Making you smile, giving you autistic joy. That's what we want. Fabulous. So I think we've got Libby swinging those tentacles. Do we have a favorite or just a stim that anyone else wants to share? I see Ben there with their, is it a dinosaur? I think it's a dinosaur. Yes, that's lovely, and it looks super, super soft.
Lowell wants to know, do you know what your stim toy is called, David? I think it's just a squishy ball thing, isn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't really a name on the thing where I got it from. I just kind of took it off a shelf and paid for it.
We do have these in our on our list. We've got like a stim toy Amazon wish list on Aucademy in the resources page, and I'm pretty sure that these are on that list. So if you look through it, you'll be able to find it.
Or if not, if you're in the UK, places like Pound Stretcher and Poundland often sell things like this in like the kids section, and I strongly disagree with them being in the kids section because I actually don't know any kids who have these. All the people I know who have them are autistic adults. But so I think actually they need to change their kids section to an autistic adult section. You know, they need a STEM section. You know, And yeah, look, it's just so good. You can, they're amazing. You can, I just can't get enough of it. It's the best thing ever.
Okay. Do we have any other? Libby, do you have a favorite stim that you were going to tell us about? Did I miss it in the chat? No, or is it just the octopus?
I think it's the octopus.
It's the filter. The filter. Yes, fabulous. Okay, well, thank you so much. Oh, we have another question. What is your favorite cake or dessert? Oh, this has changed. It was potato.
This is completely messed up my potato story.
I have to keep going. Favorite cake or dessert? I don't know.
Potato cakes.
Potato cakes. Of course. Of course.
I
mean, I'm partial to a chocolate cake.
Oh, it has to be homemade chocolate cake.
Potentially controversial opinion, but my favorite cake is coffee cake.
Ooh, nice.
I love coffee, so coffee in cake is just,
Coffee and walnut.
Oh, yeah. You got to have the walnut there, but yeah, coffee cake, coffee and walnut.
You like me nuts?
Perfect.
Oh, and looks like Libby's got Victoria sponge. That's very English. Ooh. Sai, do you want to say, speak Ben's?
Chocolate fudge cake with chocolate ice cream and whipped cream. Wow. Ice cream and whipped cream.
That sounds amazing.
I'm getting very hungry right now. I
know. I think it's time to go. Oh, my favorite form of potato. Who was doing that? I feel as though they're like...
Oh, no. Chloe's not here, so it means I'm going to have to read it out.
This is for Sai, Ben says. Okay, so my favorite potato is... what did I say last time? It was furry red or pink potatoes, which I grow in the garden, and they're absolutely lovely, just boiled. We have... Okay. Is this...
I can read if you want.
Oh, yeah. Could you read? Because I always get it wrong.
Right. I'm taking a big breath. You know when you're walking down the street at the socially accepted distance of 17 feet between you and others? When suddenly a huge black cloud looms overhead, but upon closer inspection, you discover the cloud is in fact an amazing array of the greatest pigeon army ever to grace the skies. There was an intake of breath from a certain person at the back. What seems like forever, the pigeon army roars overhead. Coo. Then amongst the grey and purple splendour, you begin to see shimmers of white raining down. No, Victoria, it's not an almighty shower of posters. As they fall closer and closer, topping the trees and houses, many resting face down in the gutters, you eagerly pluck one from between the drains and begin to gaze upon the sodden, filth-laden poster. I'm referring to the image, by the way.
Wow.
No, there's been more. Know your enemy. You guessed it. The vile image of Ben Tato himself.
Ben Tato.
And Victoria, could you please start reading books, like audiobooks, or just come on Zoom and read books, because you were meant to do that. I'm sad of that after that.
Yeah. Still not that one. Oh, psych. Still not that one. Okay. Are we gonna say our potatoes, or are we just gonna say goodbye?
Yeah,
my favorite potatoes. Yes. There you go. Done it.
Okay.
Not doing it.
Bye, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Fabulous.
wow, wow.